Alrighty. Historic event here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. This is Jerry Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon. That's a giant hollow oak log rocket stove. I'm going to be starting the reading of The Facade by Michael Hauser, professor of ancient Semitic languages at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. That dog is going to get shot. All right. Note to the reader. Every historical figure referred to, except for the characters, is real. Every quotation attributed to such persons is genuine. Every document referred to in the story actually exists. Every ancient text discussed by the characters is authentic. Pronunciation guide. 5 words here. Elohim, Bene Elohim, Hallel ben Shakar, Nachash, and Nephilim. Just going to read a dedication. More heroism has been displayed in the household and the closet than on the most memorable battlefields in history. Henry Ward Beecher. A hero puts aside their own hopes and dreams to help someone else achieve theirs. So the dedication is to Drenna, my wife and my hero. Prologue. Psalm 82, verse 1 and 6 from the Bible. Yahweh has taken his stand in the divine council among the gods. He passes judgment. You are all gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. The Bible is a peculiar, mysterious book. If those who regard it as sacred read it closely, penetrating the camouflage of sanctioned translations, they would be shocked. According to its 82nd Psalm, God is not the only God, and Jesus Christ is not his only Son. Elohim has other gods, the gods of a heavenly council. According to the 38th chapter of the book of Job, before the world was created and the earth brought forth life, they were there. Genesis 1:26 hints that when humans were first put on the earth, they were there. And when God withdrew their inheritance as lords over earth and gave the planet to mortals, they were there and were obedient for a time. Devoted to watching the affairs of humankind, they watched the human creature, witnessing the transmission of the divine image from generation to generation, a potentially endless succession of the right to rule. But they also gained knowledge of human weaknesses, proclivities, susceptibilities, and so it was that the watchers began to crave what they had lost, to seek their own dominion and succession. In the fullness of time, they arrived on earth in celestial flesh and mingled their seed with the seed of human women, bringing forth a dynastic line of immortal gods cloaked in mortal flesh. They would take back what was theirs. They would rule the earth as it should have been from the beginning, and humanity would take them as their gods. But the Maker, filled with envy, betrayed them, exiling them to the abyss, sentencing their bastard sons to death in the flood. Before their extermination, the divine half-breeds were known by men as Nephilim, giants. After the slaughter, their disembodied immortal spirits were called Shedim, demons. But the Maker had played the fool. They were reborn the instant they died, and so they cannot be killed. They had become, as their fathers, ageless, free, uncontainable, and angry. The ancient book tells us that after the flood, more of God's cosmic sons, the members of his council, broke rank, descended to earth, and stole the hearts of men. Humanity worshipped them as teachers, healers, deliverers, and their gods. They raised up other hybrid races known from the ancient biblical text, Anakim, Emim, Rephaim, and Zamzummim. These too were massacred, swelling the ranks of the Shedim. Condemned to roam the earth for millennia, the horde has continued to watch and plan and wait. Jesus understood and warned his followers. One day the watchers would return, and in a manner so cunning that even his own followers could be deceived. To a timeless being, time means nothing, but timing is everything. Chapter 1. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the powers, against the rulers of darkness, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Being bold and arrogant, some men are not afraid to slander the celestial ones. Yet even angels, although they are stronger and more powerful than men, dare not bring slanderous accusations against these celestial beings. Ephesians 6:12 and 2 Peter 2:1. I'm so eager to hear your explanation, the graying, middle-aged man patronized his burly associate. With a dismissive smirk, he scattered a half a dozen faxes across the polished brown table that separated them. The man's pudgy fingers pawed at the documents, gathering the strewn pages, a look of consternation forming on his face. His accuser straightened the vest under his suit coat and strolled slowly across the room's plush carpeting, patting each of the high-backed leather chairs as he passed. The man sifted carefully through the pages. His rage quickly turned to despair. His mind searched for a new strategy, but the thought of losing what appeared to be the find of a lifetime gnawed at him. How could they lose the artifact? He sank back in his chair with a groan of exasperation. I think it's quite understandable that Iranian customs wouldn't want their property leaving the country, Professor. The real mysteries here are the ineptitude of your associates at hiding the tablets. He shook his head. I should have taken care of this myself. And what difference would that have made? You know the answer to that. I know people who could have helped us get the tablets past customs. We just have to keep digging. The site is a royal building. They weren't the only tablets found. There's bound to be more. Frankly, Dr. Weston, we both know this door is completely closed now. You'll be arrested on sight in Iran if you return. Well done, if I must say so. The well-dressed man clapped slowly in mock celebration. What? The professor cocked his head as if to strain at the words he'd already heard. He squinted in disbelief at his accuser. Do you seriously think I've acted to undermine our goal, not to mention decades of my own work? That's bullshit. You stupid ass. He suddenly stopped and stood still. He glared at the seated man with contempt. How dare you address me in such a way? The professor rose from his seat. His complexion reddened with rage. Need I remind you who you're speaking to? Dr. Weston blustered. How many Dravidian linguists do you know? And how many of them know Elamite and Sumerian? There isn't a linguist alive who's done more work in this area. Yes, so we've heard, more than once. He resumed his gait without so much as a glance. These things take time, the scholar protested. This isn't like checking a book out at the library. Finding tablets, especially like these, is rare. You've been given months and every resource you've requested, and you've failed. Give me more time. We may still be able to get the tablets. Send me to Iran and let me try. 19th century linguists would have killed for this. The professor's accuser now stood next to him. He leaned on one of the high-backed chairs. An interesting choice of words, Professor. He straightened his tie. You should be happily translating now, but for your own presumption. That's why you were brought here to Mount Weather. You've been in and out of Iran 100 times, yet somehow Customs was in the mood to search your team more thoroughly. I don't believe in Providence. This is preposterous. I did nothing to sabotage our work. We mustn't give up. The world must know the truth and believe. Oh, they'll believe, and we won't give up. But your work here is done. No, I've devoted my whole life to this search. Then I guess you have no reason for living. What? He stuttered. Are you threatening me? Without another word, the well-dressed man turned on his heel and left the room, leaving the dumbfounded scholar alone. Dr. Weston stewed for a few seconds and then angrily tossed the papers in his hand across the table. He took out a handkerchief and wiped his brow and upper lip, his mind racing. What were his options? He had to act, but how? He reflected a moment and then grabbed the edge of the table to push himself away. To his astonishment, the chair refused to move, as though it were bolted to the floor. What the? His own frightened gasp cut short his expletive. The terror within him built to a silent crescendo. He wanted to scream, but the sound refused to escape from his gaping mouth. He gazed in transfixed horror at his own reflection in the polished veneer of the tabletop, and at that of a hideous figure towering over him from behind. Completely immobilized, Dr. Weston watched the monstrous reflection glide around the edge of the table until the figure to which it belonged stood directly in front of him. "You have failed us for the last time," the entity's thoughts invaded the scholar's mind. Immediately the hapless man's mouth clamped shut and his limbs shot outward, leaving him in a grotesque cruciform position. There was no expression on his executioner's face, but the doomed prey could feel the laughter emanating from the powerful creature. "Who, please?" The faint plea surfaced in the victim's mind only seconds before his face smashed violently with terrific force into the solid oak. The man's head jerked backward, blood streaming from his broken nose. Again and again, arms still outstretched, an unseen energy slammed the professor's face into the unyielding, stationary surface. Blood and mucus spattered against the walls, and the room's lone decoration, a black solar disk with tentacle-like rays, hung directly behind the defenseless victim. Several gratuitous thrusts preceded the release of the lifeless corpse, of his face a featureless, unrecognizable mass. The assassin turned dispassionately toward the wall at his back and passed through it.